All right, we are back with Scott Noblet. Hey, Scott.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm great. So Scott is out of Columbus, Ohio. He's with
Mhm.
eXp Realty, but you've been a realtor for a long time. You were with Remax for like 15 years,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That's right.
And were you with anybody before that? I forgot.
Yeah, I was with a smaller brokerage, a friend, yeah, that had owned a Century 21, and I went to work with him when he started his own brokerage. So
Nice. So, I mean, you've been a realtor for a long time. You've seen some things, I imagine.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this market is, I call it the most extreme seller's market I've ever seen.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in only 12 years, but yeah, it's been insane. So I
Uh-huh.
want to talk today and give some tips to the audience about how to compete and win with buyers. So can you give us a couple of tips on what you're seeing that's maybe outside of like what people are saying, you know?
Right, right.
People
Yeah,
will just come up with your offer and come
right.
up it and pay a lot more money and then
Yeah. So there's actually a book of tips that I should have pulled that forward, but there's a local agent who put together a book of tips, and we can talk about that later. But
nice.
that would be a good guide. Um, there's the typical offer more, offer appraisal gap.
Right.
Um, definitely, I'd say the rapport that you create with the seller's agent is very key. Not only be able to explain the benefits of working with your buyer, but also just even getting to know them on a personal level, or what is it that they're looking for, what is it that the sellers are looking for, and a lot of times that's possession.
Right.
What is the possession date, how a lot of these folks that I'm finding are selling because they're building right now and they want to stay in their home a little bit longer, or um, maybe they just need to get to a certain date when they will move into a secondary, an interim move before they go into the new build. So
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up a good point, and we talk about it all the time on the podcast, which is, communicate with the listing agent for sure, or the buyer's agent, like
right,
the
right,
other agent, I
right.
mean, what is it? What are the stats? Like 86% of the time there's another agent involved, or maybe more.
Hmm.
I don't know. Anyway, but I think what you had said, and a lot of people forget it, it's not only what the seller wants, but like how is that agent going to help guide the
Hmm.
other party? And so learning about them and what, because most agents out there, they have they have an idea of what they think. They've had the conversation with the client, and they've had an idea of what they think that the client will offer and what's best for them. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
getting kind of like all of that out of the way too, and they're going to have an opinion about it, even though we're not
Right,
meant to like push people into an
right,
opinion. Like we can certainly guide, you
right.
know?
Yeah. And caution, I think there's a trainer that talks about, we as realtors are not to make the decisions, but we are, essentially the ones that help them get to the decision, help them to consider the facets of the decision. So,
Exactly, exactly. So like learning about what their kind of like hangups are. Like maybe they had a bad experience on something. So like the second they see that in your offer, it's going to be like, oh no, that's bad.
mhm.
But yeah, definitely occupancy has been a huge thing, or giving
Right,
people
right.
occupancy after closing.
Possession. Yeah.
Yeah, possession
Right.
after is, yeah, exactly, is good. I think too, one of the things that we've seen is calling if you are going to do an inspection, calling the inspector and getting a specific day and time for that inspection. And
Right.
that's been really helpful too. Have
Yeah.
you seen that?
I, I would even say maybe if you know that this is the house you want to bid on, possibly have a very quick inspection,
Right.
have a contractor, have somebody that knows what they're doing even before the offer is due. That way, you're not even, you
Mhm.
want to waive it, but you want to make an informed decision, I think is,
Exactly.
yeah. And I wanted to move on. If you don't mind, I could throw in a couple other points
Let's
too.
do it.
One would be, your pre-approval. I think it does help to pick a lender that is either well known by the listing agent,
Mhm.
or well respected locally, that kind of thing. But also, we had a situation where we were able to say that my buyers are pre-approved 100,000 higher than this list price or the price that we're going to offer.
Mm.
So that shows how highly qualified the
Qualified
buyer
they
is.
are,
Yeah,
yeah.
as well
And
as
before, I would argue that we didn't want to put that on the offer necessarily, but
yeah,
now I can see why we would want to do that.
right, right. Yeah, I feel like given the not only the seller but the seller's agent the utmost confidence in your buyer.
Hmm.
There's a whole discussion about whether you should be giving a personal letter from the buyer to the seller. I think that really revolves around discrimination. You don't want to do something that would be viewed as discrimination, but there
Right.
is an emotional
Tip
factor.
number one from Scott, don't be discriminatory.
Right.
But
Yeah.
to your point, one of our listeners, TJ Gossman, he was on the episode we did about the love letters. I think he was on. Well, his point was, if you're gonna write a letter, make it applicable to the seller, not about you as the buyer. Like,
Right.
oh, here's all the things that I can do, but like, if your agent has already spoken with the listing agent and we know what the seller wants, then be like, hey, I can offer you possession. I know they said you were wanting to move, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Like, make it about the other person instead.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of your personal protected classes.
Right.
Again, I had a
Here's a
discussion with
picture
an
of my
agent.
family.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
discussion with an agent that said, you send me a picture of, a couple at the wedding and there's a cross in the background. I mean, there's all these things that are essentially protected classes that,
Yeah.
we could avoid doing.
Yeah,
So I like what you
exactly.
just said. I like, make it about the seller
Right. Exactly.
and giving the seller what they want. Just, I was thinking of other points, it's very common in our local area to do appraisal gap, and not only offer appraisal gap, but either have proof of funds or have the lender state in the letter that it's been verified that not only do they have the down payment and the closing costs, but they also have the money to cover an appraisal gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Another strategy would be, why do appraisal gap when you could pay the seller's closing costs?
Right.
Which is a sure benefit to the seller, where appraisal gap, I've had the appraisal shrink the appraisal gap down to a really minimal number.
Mhm.
So those are some of the main tips that I've come up with.
Yeah, I think we've won because of the paying the seller closing costs too. And I think if you're going to do that, because the nature of our business, we have a number of agents that, are maybe only selling 5 or 10 houses a year. So they may not fully understand what that means. So providing like some type of net sheet with it so that they
Yeah,
fully understand what the
right,
offer is and can explain it, you know, maybe perhaps better to
right.
the
Yeah,
client.
I feel like we're in a business where we deal with it all the time, but the buyers and sellers don't.
Exactly.
So,
So like,
if
what
we
are you
had good
really
illustrations,
offering?
say it
Yeah.
again.
What are you really offering?
Yeah, yeah. And can I illustrate it visually or something?
Yeah, you could say like, here's the offer, which is equivalent to a purchase price of X amount. You know what I mean? Or something like that.
Right, right. Yeah. What is the net for this? Yeah.
Exactly. But let me ask you, I mean, all of these are really good. The problem is it does require a lot of cash. So
Yeah.
like, are you seeing ones if like you don't have a lot of cash? Like, are these people getting accepted? You know?
Yeah. So I had a situation, and I want to talk about the positive situations I've had. I've definitely been beat. My clients have been beat many times
Yeah.
recently. When, anything from 3, 5 offers to probably 25, 30
Oh, yeah.
offers, locally in Central Ohio.
Right.
One tip I would say is, even if you get second place, go ahead and take a backup contract as long as you have the ability to get out of that. Because I had a really big time local agent. Her assistant had told me that she's seeing more people dropping out of first place. That
Yeah.
they're, even though they've given up all their contingencies, somehow they're finding a way to get out of it. And so I would say, even if you get second place, run with second place as long as you can.
Yeah, I agree, because most of the time you can't get out of it. You can
Yeah.
release the contract or whatever if you find something else. So yeah, second place is
Right.
not a bad thing. I
Could
think
be the new first place and not the first loser. So,
exactly.
right. Hey,
Exactly. Even maybe third place potentially,
yeah,
depending on, I mean, if there were like, more than 20 offers, I don't know that third place would be bad either, because you may have a number of people that have buyer's remorse right away, you know?
yeah. Sorry, my phone was ringing.
Oh, that's
Um,
fine.
Hey, one thing I was thinking as a good illustration is that, not only is it like I think of where we are now as a pendulum that, back during the recession, the pendulum had swung to the buyer side.
Right.
And it was like this, it
Yeah.
was maybe a 45-degree angle. And now we're in the most extreme sellers market. So it's like this, it's
Oh, yeah.
the most extreme sellers
Right.
market.
It did.
Um,
It's definitely more than 45 degrees.
right,
Yeah.
right. And another illustration
It's
is
like
that it's
89 degrees. It's
right, right. And it's
like up here.
survival, right, right, is it this way? And it's survival of the fittest financially too.
Yeah.
Cash is king. Um, conventional typically is doing well. It's sad that, FHA buyers and VA buyers are really kind of not the fittest, or maybe, are having to endure the most suffering of, not winning or whatever. So,
Right.
but I did have a good story where an FHA buyer of mine moved from second place to being the primary contract, and will be closing soon. So
Oh, good.
yeah,
Yay.
yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah,
That
yeah,
is good news.
yeah,
Yeah, that's good. We've seen here, like just recently, it looks like there's a lot more coming online too, like that's available. So that will definitely help with
yeah.
easing this tension.
Yeah, and I think about it every week. If there's 30 new listings and 28 go into contract, that's 28 less buyers that
Yeah.
maybe have cash or
Right, exactly.
right. Another point I would say is maybe the proximity, like in Columbus, we're central, there's the outer belt, and the farther out you go, the less competition.
That's
Um,
true.
your bedroom communities, if you're driving 30, 40 minutes into work around Columbus, maybe those areas are going to have less competition. So
Yeah, I've been thinking too, it's almost like if you have like a bigger house, I wonder if you could change the zoning for it to be like condos and like, you know what I mean? Make
right,
your big house small and sell like a part of it.
right, right. Yeah, really.
That may be too
Maximize the
far.
return.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. All
Take a
right.
big old house and turn it into a condominium.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So I really appreciate you being on, Scott. If people do have a referral for you in Columbus, Ohio, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So Scott and it's Scott SCOTT. Hopefully it shows up on the screen here.
Mhm.
At BuckeyeHomeTeam.com. I started my own team, Buckeye Home Team, a few years ago. So
Nice.
Scott at BuckeyeHomeTeam.com, or 614-805-9355 is my personal cell.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you being on again. Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank you. I
much.
really enjoy. You do a great job with this.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
All right, you